Good afternoon from India, YouTube. I am back with another video today, and this is about a real life incident that happened yesterday. I was having a very interesting conversation at a housewarming party that one of my friends invited me to, and there I met a certain Mr. Sumanta Basu, and I was lost in conversation with him because he was telling me about bygone era and of his childhood spent in a joint family. Now, joint families have become a thing of the past these days because most people have decided to go nuclear, and most children in families these days they have so many complicated things going on and uh, prefer to branch out or prefer to leave for higher studies. And if they do come back, it's not the same. So he was telling me about a time that was completely different when the internet was not a thing, when WhatsApp did not exist, when laptops were a conceivable, inconceivable, I should say, not conceivable. But he was telling me about his grandparents' house where he grew up, a member of a joint family, as I said. So he was telling me about his paternal grandmother, in particular, about how she encouraged him to read whatever he wanted to read and never stood in his way. But I'll come to that a little later. This full story must be told in sequence. So I was speaking to him, and he told me he's a blogger. So he shared the link of his blog with me, which is where I got some of my data from. So apparently, his grandmother was quite talented in the arts. She was a skilled singer. She was very well read, and she also did embroidery. He remembers that there was a embroidery of a pose of Nataraj, the god Nataraj, one of the um, incarnations of Shiva, which he saw on a frame in the house, a white cloth background on which Nataraj was stitched with black thread. And he told me, or rather his writing told me that his Takuma, his grandmother in Bengali, we call her Takuma. We call our paternal grandparents Takuma and Takurda, and we call our maternal grandparents Dadu and Dida, respectively, or Didi Ma, respectively. And he was telling me about how his Takuma was never one of those women with a bunch of keys tied in her sari or spending time exclusively in the kitchen. She was also a woman of multi talents. She could play the piano, she could sing very well, she could embroider, and she could read. And so he tells me of a time that he recalls when it was the afternoon siesta was done, and after the siesta, the house had woken up one by one, and they had come down to have their evening tea with some snacks. And then after that was concluded, the time between then and dinner, and then even beyond dinner, would be spent uh, nose in a book. And about how his Takuma used to tell him that, you're reading this book now, and there is a high chance you won't understand it or most of it. But if you come back to this book at a later date, when you are a little older, when you are a little wiser, when the world has revealed itself a little more to your mind, and you have grown in the world as an individual, and you have participated in the world as a part of society, when you have seen the history of the world in front of you, when you have been a part of that history, of that growing up, if you have come back to this book after a little while spent in the world, you will find that some of the meanings that you're not able to comprehend now, some of the principles in this book that you're not able to comprehend now, will become clearer to you. And if after that you set the book aside again and wait for some more time and then try again, then you will find. I'm sorry, that was a mosquito. But if you come back to the book again, then you will find that again the meaning has changed. You're able to comprehend certain things that you comprehended before in a different light. And somehow, while I was having this conversation, like I was mentioning, a floodgate opened in my mind, and I remembered my mother and my Thakuma, my paternal grandmother, who used to call my mother up and say, please let him come, let him wrap up his holiday homework for the summer in 2, 3 days, and then let him come and spend some time with us, with his cousins. And I remember that dad used to put me into the car and he used to drive me down to Triangular Park near Raj Bihari, where my grandmother used to stay. And I used to come over with a packed bag of clothes and I used to stay. And like I said, back in those days, computers were up and coming. Windows 95 was the first computer that I operated, and there was dial-up internet, and there used to be those weird noises that the modem used to make when trying to connect. And so um, what we had there was books. Again, that stupid mosquito. What we had there was books. So it used to be like childish games, like ring around the roses and chasing each other around a semi-large space and plucking out a book, maybe an Agatha Christie, or maybe uh, one of the classics, maybe a Leo Tolstoy, maybe an Asterix comic, maybe a Tintin comic, or maybe a Bengali book, maybe a Tinida or a Ghanada used to wait for us there. And it is interesting to note that as a child, I did not learn Bengali, I learned Hindi. And while that has helped me because I have gone out of Bengal to various places, I've gone to Pune, I've gone to Mumbai, I've gone to Bangalore and Guwahati most recently. And while I have gone to these places, and Hindi, being proficient, being conversant in Hindi has helped me, I do regret that I missed out on a lot of fantastic literature in Bengali, which I'm trying to rectify now. I'm learning how to read Bengali now. And so it comes to be that I remembered these times that have gone by when, my Takuma would cook for us and she would, uh, god damn that mosquito. Anyway, my Takuma would cook for us and she would, you know, mm, make these delicacies for us. And we would spend time curled up in the same bed, little children, nose in a book. And somehow talking to someone who has had the same kind of childhood, a similar kind of childhood, just sort of made me remember that things were much simpler then, things were much more streamlined. Life was not so complicated. And although it did make me feel a little old, but then again, I am quite young. I'm not even 30. And although I have read a lot in my time, every year new books come out, every year new uh, books are printed and they are brought out. But there is just that something about that period of innocence when you just had books and you could just go over to somebody's place and sit and discuss books, read a book, maybe borrow a book, with a strict note saying that you have to give it back. And Shumantaka took me down that particular memory lane, which ended in a large forest of, uh, as Counting Crows puts it, films about ghosts. For now, you see, my grandparents are no more, and my mother is no more, and all I have left are those. So, this one was for all those readers who grew up in the 90s when technology was nascent and imagination was fueled by books, because the characters in those books, the characters of the famous five, and Joe, Zetty, and Jocko, and Tintin and Snowy, and all of those wonderful, wonderful characters, those wonderful, wonderful adventures were what kept us alive. And school got over, and we used to rush home, and maybe there was something on the TV, maybe there wasn't, but there was always books. So that makes it about 10 minutes. I spoke about Sumanta, and Shumantada's blog link is given in the description of this video. Um, it is, however, written in Bengali. I'm warning you that there will be a language barrier, but if you can, do read it. He's a charming writer. And when that floodgate opened, and now I have released the flood unto you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I apologize for the stupid mosquito that tried to bite me 3 times. I'm going to perform a little bit of Hannibal Lecter on him now. But yes, it has gone on to 11 minutes, so I will stop here and I will see you soon with another video. Until then, this is the Binge Master signing off.